Hello, Year 9. Today we're going to finish off our ratio unit. We're going to look at recipe problems. So your title for today is Recipe Problems. And then as per usual, you've got your 10 questions to start yourself off. So you're hopefully doing your work in your exercise book. If you don't have an exercise book, then any piece of paper will do. If you're watching this video, now would be a good time to pause and do the questions. All right, I'll be with you with the answers in just a minute. All right, and there are your answers. So could you go ahead and mark those, ideally in a green pen, but if you've got a pink pen or a purple pen or you're using a highlighter, any color pen will do, just mark your work. All right, let's take a look at these recipe problems. Hopefully you've been doing some baking over the lockdown. I know that I have been, and I've definitely been thinking about how many biscuits the recipe is going to make and then deciding if I should double that because I really want biscuits or half that because I don't really need that many biscuits. So maybe after today's lesson, you could try some baking by yourself. Let's look at this first example. Here is a recipe for making 10 chocolate chip cookies, and the recipe says to make 10 cookies you need 100 grams of flour, 60 grams of sugar, 50 grams of margarine, 40 grams of chocolate chips, and 2 eggs. We need to work out the amounts needed to actually make 20 chocolate chip cookies. So this recipe here makes 10, and we actually want 20. So what we need to do is we need to find out how can we get from 10 to 20. And the easiest way that I know to get from 10 to 20 is to times it by 2. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to times all of these numbers in these lists right here by 2. So to get from 10 to 20, I do times by 2. So for 100 grams of flour, I'm going to double that and I'm going to get 200 grams of flour. For the sugar, I'm going to double 60 and I'm going to get 120. For the margarine, I'm going to double 50 and I'm going to get 100. For the chocolate chips, I'm going to double 40 and I get 80. And for the eggs, I'm now going to need 4 eggs. All right, that is about as much working out as you need. I don't need to see the arrow in every single question, but if you want to write the arrow to say what you're multiplying by, that would be a really good idea. I'm just looking for this list, essentially, of answers. Okay, sometimes you're going to have more than one list, but mostly that's all the working out that we're looking for today. Let's try another one. So this next question is exactly the same recipe, same set of chocolate chip cookies, except for this time they want us to make 40 chocolate chip cookies. So we have to find out how do we get from 10 to 40. Okay, do you know how to get from 10 to 40? Hopefully you're thinking that the easiest way would be to times by 4, and you'd be absolutely correct. So what you're going to do is you're going to times all of these numbers again by 4. Now, I would say you can do this without a calculator, but obviously I'm not watching you, so you can do what you want to do. So I'm going to say 400 grams of flour, 240 grams of sugar, 200 grams of margarine, 160 grams of chocolate chips, and 8 eggs. All right, so that is the basis of how you do all these questions. These ones were really nice questions, the first two to look at, because all we had to do was multiply by something. It's not always quite that straightforward. Sometimes we have multiple things to do. So let's look at another example. Sorry, I've got one more example with the same recipe. So in the first recipe, we went from 10 cookies to 20 and then to 40, but this time we want to use that same recipe to only make 5 chocolate chip cookies. So now we need to find out how do we get from 10 to 5. Okay, hopefully you're thinking that you should half that or divide by 2. Either of those two things are what you should be thinking. So you're going to take all of those numbers again and you're going to half them. So instead of 100, you've got 50. Instead of 60, you've got 30. 20 or 50 turns into 25. 40 turns into 20. And 2 turns into 1. So if we just wanted to make 5 chocolate chip cookies, according to this recipe, this is all the ingredients we would need. All right, let's look at some other questions where there's 2 steps to them. All right, so this next example is a 2-part question. It doesn't really look any different from what we've done so far, but because I put it together, I know it's a 2-part question. It says, this is a list of ingredients for making a pear and almond crumble for 4 people. So we need some flour, some almonds, some brown sugar, some butter, and some pears. We need to work out the amount of each ingredient that we need to make pear and almond crumble for 10 people. Now, I don't know a super nice way without my calculator to get from 4 to 10. Okay, maybe you do, and if you do, that's great, but I don't really know how I can get there super easily. So I've left this big gap in the middle so that I can actually do another step. There's another number that 4 and 10 have in common, and the number that 4 and 10 have in common is 2. I know that I can very nicely get from 4 to 2 by doing divide by 2, and then I know I can nicely get from 2 to 10 by doing times by 5. So I've got 2 steps to do there. So I'm going to make a list of all the ingredients that I need to make crumble for 2 people. And then I'm going to times all of those by 5 to make the list of crumble for 10 people. All right, let's get started on this. So it says to get from 4 to 2, it says I'm going to divide by 2. So I'm going to divide all of the numbers by 2. So I get 40 grams of flour, 30 grams of almonds, 45 grams of brown sugar, 30 grams of butter, and 2 pears. So I've done that first column. I've done the first column to find the recipe for 2 people. Now I need to find the recipe for 10 people, and I'm going to do that by multiplying everything by 5. So everything in this list that I just found right here, I'm going to multiply it by 5. So 40 times 5 is 200. 30 times 5 is 150. 45 times by 5 is 225. And 30 times by 5 is 150. 2 times by 5 is 10. And there we go. The entire question is done. So everything that's in this column right here that I'm putting a box around in green, this is my final answer. This is the amount of every ingredient that I need to make the pear and almond crumble for 10 people. Okay, there's not loads of working out in these questions. When you're doing these questions by yourself today, what I think would be a good idea would be to write out this list here in your book and then write out the 2 columns beside it. Okay, you might only need 1 column, but you'll probably want to write your intermediate step and your final answer. You don't have to have loads of working out today. You're probably just going to have a lot of columns. All right, let's look at one more question like this. Final example for today. Here's a list of ingredients needed to make 8 pancakes. So for 8 pancakes, we need 120 grams of flour, 1 egg, 300 milliliters of milk, and 1 tablespoon of oil. We want to work out how much plain flour, so we're only interested in the plain flour, we don't need everything, is needed to make 20 pancakes. So we need to find out how we're going to get from 8 to 20. And there's actually 2 ways we can do that. So let's see if I can split this page in 2. So I'll do one on the left side of this line and one on the right side. So I think the easiest way to get from 8 to 20 is to first find out 2 pancakes and then multiply that up and get 20. That's one way that I could do it. So to get from 8 to 2, I need to do divide by 4. And to get from 2 to 20, I need to do times by 10. So let's go ahead and answer that way. So I'm just looking at the flour, and it says I first need to do divide by 4. So 120 divided by 4 is 30 grams. And then it says I need to do times by 10. So that's going to give me 300. All right, that's one way to do it. There's lots of other ways to do it. The other way that I might do it is if I think about what do 8 and 20 have in common, they also have the number 4 in common. So maybe I'll try to get to 4 pancakes first, and then I'll get up to 20 pancakes. So I have to think to get from 8 pancakes to 4 pancakes, then that first step is divide by 2. And then to get from 4 to 20, the next step is times by 5. So let's go ahead and try that. So we have to first do divide by 2. So we take 120 and we can divide that by 2. 120 divided by 2 is 60. And then from there, we need to do the times by 5. 60 times by 5 is 300. Now, as you can see, we'd only ever be interested in the final answer, which here is 300 grams, and here is also 300 grams. It doesn't actually matter which way you do the question. You just need to make sure that you get to the correct final answer. All right, that's all from me today. There's two tasks, but they're just one task split over 2 pages in the PowerPoint. Try your best. You can do them in any order that you want, and the answers are also included on the next 2 slides after that. All right, let me know if you have any problems, and I will talk to you on Monday. Bye.